The United Kingdom is a fascinating case study of how once a great people and country can degenerate within just half a century into a place that makes legit dictatorships like Belarus or the Islamic Republic of Iran look like bastions of freedom in comparison. Let's explore. Hello everyone and welcome to the Freedom Alternative. Alright, so the case we'll be discussing today is just another step in a very, very long trend of Great Britain becoming less and less great and more totalitarian. If you're unsure that this is indeed a trend, I will leave in the low bar links to past videos that I made about the slow but consistent march towards totalitarianism that's been going on in the United Kingdom. So, with that said, let's get straight into the article and discuss the principles and the latest jab taken by the government at everyone's privacy, security, and liberty. So, coming from the BBC, porn ID checks set to start in April 2018. It's a very long article and goes like this, quote, "A 9-month countdown to the introduction of compulsory age checks on online pornography seen from the UK has begun. The April 2018 goal to protect under-18s was revealed as Digital Minister Matt Hancock signed the Commencement Order for the Digital Economy Act, which introduces the requirement. But details as to how the scheme will work have yet to be finalized. Experts who advised ministers said the targeted date seemed unrealistic. The Act also sets out other new laws, including punishing the use of bots to snatch up scores of concert tickets and mandating the provision of subtitles on catch-up TV. The age check requirement applies to any website or other online platform that provides pornography on a commercial basis to people in the United Kingdom. It allows a regulator to fine any business that refuses to comply and to ask third-party payment services to withdraw support. The watchdog will also be able to force internet providers to block access to non-compliant services. Ministers have suggested one of several ways this might work would be for pornographic sites to demand credit card details before providing any access, since in the UK, consumers typically have to be over 18 to have a card of their own. But the specifics are being left to the as-yet unappointed regulator to determine. While it has been proposed that the British Board of Film Classification will assume this role, a spokesman for the Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sport said the appointment would not be formalized until the autumn. "We're already working closely with DCMS to ensure the effective implementation of the Act," the spokeswoman for the BBFC told the BBC, but added that it was too early to say more about what guidance it might issue. The measure has been welcomed by child protection charities, including ChildNet. Quote, "Protecting children from exposure, including accidental exposure to adult content, is incredibly important given the effect it can have on young people," said its chief executive Will Gartner. "Steps like this help restrict access." No, they don't, but let's carry on. MindGeek, which operates several of the world's most popular porn sites, has also previously indicated support. But two experts who advised the government on its plans have expressed reservations about both how quickly the scheme is being rolled out and its wider implications. "It seems to be a very premature date," commented Dr. Victoria Nash, lead author of a report commissioned in the run-up to the law being drafted. "The idea that you can get a regulatory body up and running in that time frame seems extraordinary to me. And while I don't have a problem with asking these companies to act responsibly, I don't see it as a solution to stopping minors seeing pornography." This, she explained, was because the Act does not tackle the fact that services including Twitter and Tumblr contain hardcore pornography but will not be required to introduce age checks. Nor, she added, would teens be prevented from sharing copied photos and clips among themselves. It may make it harder for children to stumble across pornography, especially in the younger age range, but it will do nothing to stop determined teenagers, Dr. Nash concluded. The cybersecurity expert on the same advisory panel was more critical. The timeline is unrealistic, but beyond that, this is one of the worst proposals I have seen on digital strategy, said Dr. Joss Wright from the Oxford Internet Institute. There are hundreds of thousands of websites where this material can be accessed, and you're not going to catch all of those. There's privacy issues. You're requiring people to effectively announce the fact that they're looking at this material to the credit card authorities. And there's serious security issues, from requiring people to enter their credit card details into untrusted sites. They may well say there will be other magical ways to do the age check, but I very much doubt they will be non-discriminatory against adults without credit cards, transparent, privacy-preserving, and secure for end users. Alright, let's stop here for a moment and then we'll discuss the rest of the law. So, first of all, finally, at least someone says it in public. This whole business with credit cards everywhere is not only discriminatory, now that is self-evident anyway, but it is also inherently unsafe. Gee, you think? I mean, who would have thought that putting all your money in a place where multiple third parties can take a peek is actually remarkably unsafe for one's privacy? But beyond that, just as I mentioned in the video about the Tennessee resolution, where I mentioned that the place where the religious left and the religious right meet is at banning pornography, the whole measure is deeply misguided. It starts from the horrifying assumption that the state, not the parents, is the primary caregiver in this department. Now remember, this is the same country where the courts get to sentence children to death. See for reference the Charlie Gard case, whose parents were not allowed to travel to the United States and attempt to save their child because the right to die with dignity trumps the right to life in one's own terms. So it should thus come as no surprise that such an insane bill would come out from the United Kingdom. Now, quite frankly, it could not have come out from anywhere else. But what this bill and also the knife control measures show is that the inherent backwardness of government and politicians when it comes to the online world, and this particular backwardness is an inescapable phenomenon. Put simply, these people really don't understand the online world. Let's be clear on this. There is no such thing as the choice of teenagers to watch porn or not. That will always happen unless you lock away teenagers in facilities with no electricity, something which I wouldn't put past Britain at this point, quite frankly. I mean, this is the country that harasses its children for looking at the political page of the wrong political party. Anyway, as I was saying, teenagers will always be looking at pornography, or at the very least, actively seek it out. Sure, not all teenagers, but the overwhelming majority of them will anyway. This has been the case for a very long time, much longer than the moralizers would dare to acknowledge. So the question is not whether we allow teenagers to seek out pornography or not. No one cares, especially not the teenagers themselves. They'll seek it out regardless of the opinions of the law or the adults or the society at large. The question is, where will the teenagers find the pornography they're seeking? And nowhere is not an acceptable, reasonable, or even possible answer. Under the framework of this law, there are three answers. Well, possibly only two. The first one is VPN services, and then surf freely using a server located in a less insane country. But this is predicated on the notion that the UK government will not try to crack down on VPNs as well, which they might try and make it difficult for teenagers to use it, unless teenagers learn to use Bitcoin and learn a foreign language and buy VPN services from non-British providers using Bitcoin, in which case it's game over for the British government. And believe it or not, this is actually the best case scenario. Scenario number 2, the dark net. This is basically the worst case scenario, predicated on the assumption that the government successfully cracks down on VPS and porn services, and also somewhat successfully blocks some of or the biggest services that offer pornographic material free of charge. Under this scenario, everybody loses, starting with the society that the moralizers claim to protect with these kinds of measures. Because let's be clear, it doesn't matter what your opinion is or my opinion is about teenagers looking at pornography. What does matter is how they're looking at it. And if this crackdown is successful, which I doubt it will be because the government sucks at everything, but if this crackdown is successful enough, then teenagers will be seeking pornography on the dark net. Now, anyone familiar even remotely with the dark net already knows that this is the worst possible outcome. In simpler terms, do you want your 15-year-old to get his porn from semi-professional places like Pornhub or from sadistic places on the dark net? And it's a serious question that nobody is considering right now. And not only this is a serious question, it is also the only question that indeed matters. The last thing you want is a generation brought up on porn from the dark net. Now, whenever someone says the words porn and dark net in the same sentence, many think straight to child porn, but that's not the only danger. The dark net has things that are far worse than child porn. Now, mind you, I don't mean child porn in the legal sense, but in the sense everyone understands the term, namely prepubescent children involved in sexual activities that are videotaped. Now, that is child porn, and those who produce such material should be buried under the jail. A material with 17-year-olds fooling around is not child porn. In fact, the child porn laws have their own bundle of insanity. If you can legally get married, be taxed, and have children at age 16 anywhere in Europe, well, except Ireland, if I recall correctly, but heaven forbid you take pictures or videos with you making out with your legal husband or wife. Madness. But that's a separate topic for another day. And finally, scenario number 3 is basically a combination of 1 and 2. Namely VPNs and much higher reliance on free of charge services than those on a commercial basis, as the UK law currently puts it. But beyond these scenarios, there's also the question of privacy and diminishing respect for the law, because one of the consequences of having so many absurd laws is that the populace slowly but surely and consistently loses its respect for the law to begin with. Such a law presumes that everyone living in the United Kingdom, citizen or not, is so fragile and would simply melt if porn would easily be available for those who seek it out. So the only way to mitigate this is to install a giant and inefficient bureaucracy to effectively censor the internet for everyone in the name of an unimaginary and unaccomplishable greater good. My partner in doing the Friday Voice of Europe podcasts recently wrote an article proposing the intellectual exercise of the American Revolution having been a mistake. It's an interesting read, and I highly do recommend the article, but looking at the direction Canada and the United Kingdom are going, I'm gonna side with Americans on this one, even if it was solely to avoid this type of regulatory shite, and it was all worth it. All the risks included. Anyway, this law is not just about porn, it's about other online things too. So let's read and then we'll comment. Quote, other topics covered by the Act on which work can now formally begin include requiring video-on-demand programs to contain subtitles as an option, making it a criminal offense to use automated computer programs known as bots to walk by event tickets before selling them at the inflated prices, simplifying planning rules to make it easier to install mobile and broadband infrastructure, raising the maximum penalty for instances of online piracy from 2 to 10 years. Some Some provisions set out by the Act have already come into force, including the introduction of a broadband universal service obligation to give households the right to request download speeds at least 10 megabits per second and increased fines for firms behind nuisance calls. The Digital Economy Act is about building a strong, safe, and connected economy, said Mr. Hancock. It will secure better support for consumers, better protection for children on the internet, and underpin a radical transformation of government services. Now, I wouldn't want to be Mr. Hancock right now. I mean, gee, having to defend that nonsense in public? It's embarrassing. By far, the funniest portion in this one is the one with the right to request download speeds of at least 10 megabits per second. I mean, seriously, Britain, why don't you try what we did over here in the Intermarium? It's called capitalism, free markets, and it kind of tends to work. Now, for those who want to know more, I'll direct you all to my older video called Why is the Internet in Romania So Damn Fast? And the arguments that I made there apply to the T in every country of the Intermarium. But the short version is this, in case you don't want to watch that one. If you want higher speeds, just cut back regulations, including and especially local city or town hall regulations. Let the market work. I mean, heck, 10 megabits per second on cable internet is available virtually nowhere in Romania. Something like 2% of the territory and way under 1% of the populace can still theoretically purchase speeds lower than 16 megabits per second, but for prices averaging like €3 per month or something, and oftentimes free of charge because, as a bonus to the phone plan or satellite TV or something like that, since not even the companies feel comfortable charging you shekels for such a low speed internet. The UK is a bit bigger than Romania territorially wise. I mean, Northern Ireland makes it bigger otherwise. The proper island, Britain itself as it would be, is just as big as Romania, but with higher population density and no mountains and no serious extreme climate. So the only reason this is still a problem is because of regulations. I mean, companies here can take 100 megabits per second in the middle of the mountains at 2,000 meters altitude and more where winter temps go way beneath minus 35 Celsius. And yet the UK companies can't get at least 50 megabits per second on a largely plain country with no extreme conditions? Like hell they can't. They're not allowed to. You don't need more laws. Quite exactly the opposite is what you need. As for the rest of the provisions, there's hardly anything to be said, really. 10 years in jail for online piracy? I mean, this basically means that you can realistically spend more time in jail for watching a torrented movie than for gang rape. Good job, Britain. Very, very well done. Also, criminal offense for mass buying? Really? Because mass buying via bots is basically the same thing as going to the farmer's market and buying all of the potatoes brought there in that day. Why should that be a crime? Oh, but you see, these people buy tickets via bots and resell them at higher prices, goes the prayer. And I'm like, yeah, so? No, seriously, so what? Also, if event organizers are so concerned about this, they can make the tickets non-transmissible, such as by tying them to the name of the buyer or some third-party unique code or something like that. That's what the one of the local football squads in this town did after they had half-empty stadium when they met Manchester United. They considered they wanted more people on the stadium, a lot more than them wanting more income from the tickets. See? Easy peasy. No need for national laws. Just leave the people alone. They can solve their problems much better than the out-of-touch bureaucracy from Westminster can even imagine. Believe me. Ultimately, this is just another step from a long march of the United Kingdom towards a totalitarian place, a tendency that has only been accelerated in the last 15 years or so, and a tendency that, since Thatcher, seems impossible to even halt, let alone reverse. Now, I don't know what the right answer is. I'm not sure if this trend, this march of totalitarianism, can even be stopped at this point. There are not enough people there that even understand why this is evil. But I do know one thing. This is not going to end well. And the effects won't be noticeable immediately or in 2018, but more like in 2028, when places with little to no regulations on the internet, and especially the places with no absurd regulations on the online world, will become more and more prosperous, while the UK, at best, will stagnate. Which makes the statement that the Digital Economy Act is about building a strong, safe, and connected economy even more laughable. Laws like these don't make a country a better place. They make it a far worse place. Alright, I think that's enough for this. I'll actually come back to a UK topic fairly soon because I've seen something really stupid in The Guardian that really needs to be commented on. But until then, thank you all for watching. Thank you for your continuous and generous support. Follow me on Gab, Twitter, and Facebook, and I'll see you around on Freedom Alternative.